Hello. Can everyone hear me? Good? Okay, perfect. So today's topic will be about how to code frictionless and having fun coding. So it's supposed to be easy, and your IDE should ideally also help you and complete things for you. So yeah, just quickly about me. I'm a long-time developer in PHP. Have been doing a lot of tooling and plugin topics the last years. I have been in the core for about 14 plus years. PHP probably for 20-something years. So today we focus on CakePHP 5 and in this specific case PHP Storm, because it together with some of the tools fit very well to this approach. Ideally also other IDEs have similar tooling and can help to really speed up local development. So we talk a bit about the tooling that we're going to use. We talk specifically about the IDE helper and how it can also help to speed things up and to really help in this rapid development approach. How annotations can help, how autocomplete and type hinting can be activated and also can be customized. So oftentimes maybe you have something on your own that is very tedious to actually remember all of the different possibilities and magic strings, and so we want to unmagic them. PHP Stan and Psalm compatibility, as this is also quite important to keep a project safe in maintainability. So being able to adjust it, modify it, enhance it, but not break other code maybe. And we can also look a little bit into the testing and how you can use at least basic TDD to help and guide you here. Also how to maybe generate tests, how to bake test cases and so on. Yeah, I think that's plenty for the next hour that we're going to use here. So in terms of IDE tooling, you might have heard about the editor config. This is a plugin that you can install. It's a standard that defines each of the files that is in your IDE in specifically and most importantly what the indentation is per file. So YAML files, usually the spaces. Other files can accept tabs, neon files as well. So there are different standards per file. Some of them need a new line at the end, others don't. And so these kind of things can be put into the editor config. If we look into a demo app that I created freshly from scratch, close all the tabs. So if we look into a fresh generated CakePHP application, we can see that I put a editor config in here. Maybe it was probably already in here, I'm pretty sure. And so with all these kind of configurations, you can see that it should ideally be taken into account whenever you go in. Even if you copy paste from a different one, the IDE will automatically transfer to that style. So that's really quite important. Some files like neon files will break if you have different styles mixed. Others will probably accept it. So yeah. This is the editor config. Then you want to have different standards applied, PHP CS, for example, coding standards. So for this, most of you will create a PHP CS XML file. It's usually also already created with a certain standard. I personally use the PHP collective code sniffer. It's a bit more powerful. It has more probably like twice or 3 times as more sniffs in there that also apply to modern PHP 8 attributes and functionality. And you can silence certain things that are not relevant for you. You can also exclude certain folders. All of that should be set up so that it's running. And the Composer script, if you are aware of the script sections of Composer here you can add neat little small snippets of code, and in my case I can always just run Composer CS check, so Z, and then this will actually run the test suite for this, so the code sniffing. The IDE also, it detects this PHP-CS here, also the PHP Storm at least does, and whenever you modify something, for example, let's go into the application, and let's say we have a comma missing here. Yeah, so oftentimes, if it's configured correctly, and I hope it is, it should actually then allow you to auto-fix this in the IDE. So usually it will notify about this. Maybe it's not activated just yet. I will look into that in a moment. But CS check should definitely alert us, and it can auto-fix it. So CSF will fix those 2 lines for us. But you can set this up that you have it either on key up, like leaving this file, or manually by clicking and then enter, auto fixed in each file already. So you can visually see what you can do, but also you can just run it globally across your code base. It's quite fast, and this should be in your CI templates. So whenever you have some kind of workflow happening, so each of those workflows has the testing running, the coding standards running, PHP Stan running. So all of those should be in your CI, and this way each of the team members keeps this kind of quality up. So that's quite important. So some of these files, like Neon files here, can be and should be up to a high level. Yeah? So don't use maybe level 1 if it's a new project. If it's a legacy project, you start at 1 and you build yourself up all the way to 8. And this way, your code will be maximum introspected, but also this will side effectly help you to actually have better autocomplete and better introspection also for the IDE, and that's for the human working on it. And so it's benefiting everyone if you have also a good level on this one. Some use AI. So I added a basic AI from Tab 9, I think. There's also, I think, a built-in one or from GitHub. So there are several ones that can help you to autocomplete certain things. I think I have been using it mainly to just, if there's a doc block or some kind of block that repeats itself, it kind of knows it quite well, what's going to be expected, and then it will autocomplete. An example would be if you're in the plugin section here, and let's say we have the IDE helper here. I'm going to take those away. And then you go in here, and you just type, and it already tells you, oh, could be only CLI. Yeah, actually it's true. I don't need that from a different. And so on optional, yeah, maybe it doesn't need it on production. So if it's on production, not there, it should not fail. So, and so this is an example of how the AI can just guess from the surroundings. And there are more complex examples possible, of course. Sometimes I'm just happy that I don't have to type the whole line. I'm just tapping, and it's already done for me. So that's pretty cool. CakePHP 5 and PHP Storm fit well together. By default, it has a very high support, but it can be enhanced further with 2 different tools. So one is the deep assoc completion plugin from the JetBrains site directly. This one introspects the calling code and sees what kind of options are there available. So for any array, what kind of key value pairs are available. So when I, for example, go into I think a controller should have something in there, right? Yeah. So a load component call with a flash string key, that's the name. And usually it accepts an options config array, a second param, as you can see. So if you don't know what's possible, you can look into the code. I just click on it, and I can follow the whole chain, which will take some time, right? But also with this plugin, you can just go here, and it will tell you. So this plugin introspects the chain and sees that there is somewhere along the line a key class name and a key enabled that is possible to set here. So this can help you in some cases to more quickly know what kind of key it is, and then you can just set the value on your own. So that's quite handy. More tips for this are on the PHP Storm wiki page on the IDE helper. So that's my IDE helper. I think I have it open here. Yeah, and you just go to the wiki and you can see some more tips. Maybe you can add your own tips for a different IDE that you have. So that is absolutely fantastic if you would do that. So the IDE helper for many is a default to directly include. We also want to do that right now because we're going to need that to move forward. So this will help us to annotate any existing code or code that you will add via Bake. It also creates meta files or code completion files that can be used for the IDE to actually understand your code better and to understand the framework code better. So for now, we want to install the IDE helper, which I can just copy paste, I guess. I mean, it's also in the Composer JSON file as a recommendation here. Yeah. So it suggests the IDE helper and asset compress, which we can also install in a second, to be able to render out styles and CSS and JavaScript files together in one bundled file. So it's better to consume by the end user. So we're installing the Composer require IDE helper and maybe -def, because it's a required def dependency. If you don't do that, it will probably ask you anyways, because it knows it's a def dependency. We can remove the suggest. So now we have it installed. What we want to do is we want to activate it, and I might have already done that in the plugin section. Yeah. So if this wasn't in here, you would have to run bin. Actually, I should do that in the. Yeah, let me go into the ddef, which I'm using, SSH. Yeah, so bin cake, you can see all the commands, and we want to use the load plugin, load IDE helper. So that one would add it. You can also add the config options, which we just did, which would then be only CLI and optional true. So the plugin should be available. We can see that if we run bin cake again, because now we should have all the IDE helper stuff in here. For now, we can run annotate all and just see -v -d as a verbose to actually see all the output, and d for dry run, and see what happens. Okay, so it actually sees that there is an app view now in your file, in your folder. So the app view is more correct because it contains all your helpers that you just added in your project. So why not using that for all the view templates? It also registers some kind of variables that are unknown at this point for the IDE and suggests whatever it can guess from it. So if we say, yeah, that makes sense, I mean, we can look into the home template for name pretty quick. So home, and there should be a $name. Yeah. Wait, actually, error 500 template is probably a better example. So the error 500 template, yeah. You can see here, error is red, and it says undefined error. And if you wanted to autocomplete this, or if you wanted to actually see what kind of instance is this, it's much harder to do from just an undefined variable. Yeah, it's an error that's also kind of annoying. The IDE helper will first, if we do the dry run away, will actually annotate now at the top with whatever it knows. It doesn't know what exactly it is, but it knows it's an object based on the instance of. So here at least we now know it's okay, it's an object, maybe it's instance of an error, and then you have the autocomplete on everything available, and it's going to be happy. Yeah, and also PHP Stan introspecting this at some point. It doesn't do templates usually if you don't specify it, but later in your code somewhere else, having a similar kind of topic, it will know that it's supposed to be an object, and if you treat it as a string or as a integer or something else, it will actually be able to warn you. If it's mixed or if it's missing, it will not be able to tell you anything. So we want to have a better quality of also checking our code. So the annotator ran. We also have, if we look into the IDE helper again, we have a illuminator. We don't need that for now. That's more to actually generate speaking class constants instead of magic strings. We want to use the PHP Storm and code completion topics. So both of them we can generate with composer bin cake generate code completion, which, why would it want a ratings plugin? Where does that come from? I don't think I activated a ratings plugin, did I? Oh, that's copy-paste stuff. Okay, never mind. I'll take that away. Yeah, let's take that all away. Cool. Okay, let's see. Yeah, now it works. It generated some of those, and we also want to do PHP Storm, which is actually the more important one, as this meta file is directly used by it to understand all the magic happening in the Cake world. If you want to look into it, here's the file. It has different types that you can here add. Arguments types for cache, add, clear. So this is always the method name, what position on it, and then what argument sets are there. And if you look in the argument sets for it, then here you can see, these are the different argument sets. So these are the strings that are possible for this. And we have, based on this file, there's a lot of stuff that it can autocomplete for you. One of the useful things for the beginning would be if we look into migrations. So oftentimes you start an application now using an empty database. I assume we have an empty database. Let's look, or at least close to empty. Is it localhost? Localhost? No? Where is the database? Must be on some port. But okay, we can just assume that it's empty. I will not look into it for now. But let's create maybe a users table. So if we go into the command here, bin cake bake create users. This is a name for it that automatically assumes that you want to also add some fields. So create, and then the name of the table, and then each time the pair key value for each field in the database table and which kind of type. So if that works, wait, cake bake migration. Yeah, that worked. So if we go into our migrations folder, that's an old one from here that I used earlier. So here, create users. Yeah. So this has now been created for us with all of these possible fields that we just said we wanted to have. What if I wanted to have another one modified? So of course I can run it again and force create, or I can just quickly copy paste. And here, this is now coming from the IDE helper. Instead of manually having to guess or type, it will autocomplete. So this directly comes now from this kind of autocomplete magic. And here we can select daytime. But also if you wanted some other field, so let's say we add a, let's say comment, and it's probably a text something, right? So let's see, do we have a text? Yes, we have a text. So text or binary, blob, decimal, enum. So there's everything in there. So maybe we use a text for now. And some configs, maybe we have to say null true, which actually the AI is now proposing. So this is now AI actually. default null, null true. So it makes sense. If we want to have a comment in there that is actually not required, then it would be null true. Also, maybe we want to have we have a status on it, okay, and the status is currently a string. We can use enums either as a string or as an integer. If we have no integer yet, maybe we want to use that. So what if we use an integer here and say the limit is 10? Null is false because it by default will be 0, and then that would be inactive or something, so that's cool. So default would be 0. Yeah. Okay, so we have a migration file that would probably work for our users table. Just quickly generate by bake, complete it a little bit manually. Then we can see if we are connected to the database, migrations status. Yes, so my demo from earlier with examples is still there. We can ignore that for now. And we have the users table that would be now something we want to add. We can migrate. And we have a duplicate column created. Yeah, because I wanted modified. Oops, I did not modify that one. Cool. Now we have what we want. There we go. All right. So now we have a table in the database which is about users. And we want to now bake the code for that, which we can do using bake and probably all. It does autocomplete us what we want to use, or at least tells us that it's users and examples available. So if we want users, we can check if we want to have an admin prefix. Sometimes that is useful if you want to make only for admins available. You can have a specific theme. So oftentimes I use my setup theme because it contains some more little gotchas that are useful. Like for example, it directly edits icons into it. But we can do that later. So for now we can use text. Yeah, so let's just do that and see what happens. Okay, it created our users table. Interesting. So it didn't create the users enum just yet, probably because we didn't specify that in the let's close this. So model table, users table. Here we probably want to have a field for enums. Get schema. And here we should be able to set schema. Schema, set column type, status. This one is not auto-completed yet. Why? Because we need to actually rerun it in order to work. So if we have our command from earlier, which is about PHP Storm, as soon as it's loaded, it should actually be able to give us the status string. But if it doesn't load yet, we can manually do that for now. And is it enum as this? I think so. Okay. Return schema. I think that should work. If you want, we can run the annotator again to see if there's anything of the bake templates that would be necessary to change. Let's see. Okay, well, it does change it into a more modern syntax, but it's basically the same. It just uses a different way, a more modern way of doing that. And for some reason, it still changes the string from int to status, from int to string for the status. Okay, well, we can do that. It's okay. So, all right, all the annotations are updated. So even if you have old code, you can update it to whatever is currently recommended and working. So maybe we can look at the users now. Maybe it should work. Let's see. ddev, that's our application, and users should be, yeah. So we have our users table. If we create a new user, we still don't have all of the enum magic just yet. I'm wondering if I should rebake and hope that it works. Maybe I'm still missing something. I didn't do the enum stuff for a while. It was like a few months ago, but we can just bake all minus f again. Well, actually, not minus f. Only the templates. Or we just manually say what we want. So no, that one is not what we want. Yeah, we can do the users controller and all the index files. Okay. Anything changed? No. Good. So why would it not take the enum for the status? Okay, well, let's move on for now. So we created a users table. We can have users in there. Let's go back to the presentation. We have the annotate to update existing doc-block annotations. And they also help PHP Stan and Psalm to see what exactly is returned. So part of that is actually used by that. There's also an extension for PHP Stan from CakeDC that you can use to further enhance that for all of the returning objects on a get table locator, get call, on these different ways of just getting the table objects more magically. If we look into the table here, for example, interesting, this still uses the old syntax, but we could here say get table locator, get. Here you can see this is the IDE helper again. So it knows which tables are available, in this case which model tables, and it will auto-suggest you that. So you're free to use the magic string here because it's now auto-completed. There's no way of typoing it, also having a typo in it. Of course, you could also use the FQCN. So as it just said, you can use the app model table, users table, FQCN. So some people prefer that because it gives you the linking. So you know when you go to the table and click usage, that it's actually this specific controller that is using that table. The magic string does not offer that. So that is a choice that you can do. Sometimes I like the magic strings because they are way shorter and you don't need to clutter your use statements like too much up here. So it's a preference, I guess, depending on what you want to do. So here with this one, this is a magic call, right? So it's not like before where it's annotated above. And here you need these tools, the PHP Stan, CakeDC instance, and as well as this kind of IDE helper to know that whatever is returned here is actually the users table so that you can see the concrete objects here. Yeah, find is not concrete. This is basically always available. But if you have on the users table a very specific function that you're using, then it will only be detectable if you use these toolings, because then it will be able to click and you can actually find it. And your PHP Stan will know that it introspects the right object. And whenever you have a typo here or you refactor, and this is basically an old one, it would be able to like alert you about it. If this is again mixed, it will not be able to alert you about this because it doesn't know what to do on a unclear object. Yeah, so it's very important to keep that in mind for this. When we talk about code completion, I also want to go into possible custom extensions, and we have two examples that I want to show you. First, yeah, just quickly, some people like the manual routing with the arrays. So if you have index here, if you have this kind of syntax with the arrays, now some people like that. It's action, controller, all of these elements in one array. But if you want to autocomplete this, actually, you can use the path link. It's a new URL from path and link from path, and they actually are autocompleted. So if we have the HTML linker, link from path, so link from path, then this one, you will see that now you can actually autocomplete this. So that's quite nice. It's usually quicker, and especially if you have a complex routing, like let's say a plugin, namespace plugin, so ADMAT / some kind of logging auth. You have an admin prefix in there or some kind of other prefix, and then the controller and the action. This is quite a complex array that you would build. With these kind of magic strings, it's much easier to build them. So whatever complicated thing you want to do, bam, you're done. So this can be an alternative to use. Yeah? And the IDE helper will provide you with the optional with these options that you can use for this. Every time you add a new action, every time you add a new controller, you would need to run the generate again here, and generate PHP Storm. So maybe you can also make this a shortcut on your command line, so you can just click it, and then it would be available again. So yeah, that's just convenience stuff, of course. This is the promised CakePHP Stand extension that is very valuable to install. And then you add and include it as a include statement in your PHP Stand Neon file. Yeah. So let's go further into our coding session. I have prepared some examples that we can use and see if we can make it work more easily for us. So one of them would be, for example, to create and to use queue jobs. For that, we have a plugin that is here, the queue. So if we want to install that, basic setup, we can install this in your application. So now the queue is installed. We want to also bin cake plugin. I'm just too lazy to actually type it out. Queue. So that is added as well. We should have the queue available now. Let's see. Yeah. And I have a second window here where I can actually bin cake queue run in a second. So we can just have a background task running. What we want to do now is we want to create a background task, for example, to send the registration email. So if someone registers, we don't want this to be async, but an async kind of command, so that whatever email server might not respond in time or times out, it can requeue and it can try again sending it. I actually have this problem sometimes with my provider. I'm depending on the provider. There can be a small hiccup, and then it just has to try again a second time. And it's a bit sad if that email would just disappear and the user would sit in front of this desk and waiting for the whole day, and then it just never comes back to your site because just this little small thing. So maybe we can bake a small queue task to do that. Bake queue bake. Yeah, there it is. Bake queue task, and we call it user mail or something. So we have now a user mail task. It should be in the source directory. There it appears. User mail task. See, there we go. And here we could just add our whole mailing stuff. And yeah, let's simulate that for now. Then to enable this, we need to first again do our little, oops, I don't want to click that. We need to annotate again. Generate PHP Storm, because we have a new plugin in the house now. And this new plugin comes with a new table. So we want to also generate the database for that. Cake migrations, migrate minus PQ. As per documentation, I'm sure if you read this, you will see that that needs to be done in order for the Q database to be available. And this Q database now should be ready. And now we can use the table object of the queue anywhere in our controllers. So in our for now we can simulate it actually by creating a new user. By creating a new user, we can send out the email automatically. So let's do that. If we have an add of the user and the user saves successfully, then we would go into this, get table locator, get, and now comes again the IDE helper into play. It shows us the queue jobs available. And on the queue job, it sees the create job. So that would not be working in double ways if we didn't have all of that installed. So the create job gives us, again, the option to add what kind of job is it, and then maybe some payload and some configuration. If you go in, you can see the same documented here. And if we want to say, okay, well, this is a, we know that it's an email, user email, right? It actually has it autocomplete as well. So you have the internal tasks from the queue. Most of them are like examples or some really basic stuff like execute some command. But the user mail is what we want to use. So two ways again, either the fully qualified class name or just this magic string that is fully auto-completed through our IDE helper. And usually you give it some payload. So it can be the user ID that is just currently the one that is getting passed. And if we want to look at the queue backend to see if this actually works, I think we should be able to. I didn't test this because we need admin prefixes for that, right? If you went into the queue, admin queue. Oh, it would almost work if there was a configure helper. Okay, we can add that. In the app view, we need some helpers. This should also be auto-completed for us. Let's check config. The shim plugin hasn't been added into. This is a chain of things happening here. The plugins for the IDE helper needs the shim plugin to be manually included because we didn't load it manually. Usually you don't need to. So did we even install the shim plugin? I don't think we did. Huh. Cool. Then composer require shim. And now it should work, right? Okay. Going back to where we were just now. Load helper. Yeah, shim configure. It's auto-completed now because now the plugin is properly loaded. That's cool. And does the backend now work? Oh, there's more stuff that needed. Did the tools plugin get installed or not? All right. We don't necessarily need the backend, but it would be nice to showcase it. So let's just install that too. And maybe plugin load tools. There we go. Any more problems? Format helper needs to be installed. So again, I'm lazy, so I'm going to generate PHP Storm, because now I can have the autocomplete on the load helper call, which is that one. Yep. Anything else missing? Oh, we get into some kind of stuff here. Okay, I will take care of that in a moment when we talk about templating. Then let's just for now continue with the queue. So we have our app. Where's the table? We have our users table now. Sorry, our users controller automatically adding this user mail with some kind of ID. In our user mail task, part of the data will now be the ID. So user ID is actually data. It's almost smart AI, but not quite. So this is actually the ID given. We can do a user equals this get table locator, get users, get user ID. So this should give us the user, and then we can operate on this. We can send an email, we can do whatever we want in here. For now, how about we throw new exception just to see that it works with the user. It does exist. User ID. So if it works, it should throw the exception with this user. So instead of sending the mail now, which will take a bit more to come up with, we can see that it's both working, and because of the exception, it will requeue. So it will try again at some point in the future, depending on the configuration setup. Does the queue run already? Aha, we need some queue worker setups. That's not a problem. We can do that. So I'll just copy it over from an existing queue implementation. Yeah, into our application app custom. So there we go. What is this JSON serializer? Yes, of course. It's by default, so we don't need that, I assume. We should be fine. Yeah, so the queue is running, probably like 30 seconds long, because we do have some timeout on it by default. If we now create a new user, we were here users add, yeah. So if we create a new user, test me, we don't have enum, so we just do 0 is fine, and then we create it. Oh, okay. If I didn't activate this, maybe I should just silence this in the users table. Where? Yeah, let's silence this for now. Okay. Okay, so we have a user that has been saved, and oh voila, we got our user mail directly executed with the exception that we expected. So now it would be requeued after a certain timeout, not directly, but depending on the setup, and then it will try this again until the limit is reached that it's configured. So depending on our user mail tasks, what is the current limit that is set? Retries. So we can set a retry here. Public int retries 2. So we can say, okay, well, emails 2, and then the third one would actually never run again. Then maybe there's really something wrong with the emailing, and we need to actually look into it. So we don't want to invoke this forever. Yeah? So this is not a good idea. So if we stop the queue runner, queue status, queue info. Yeah, so we have one in there still. Queue run. Okay, then let's add a new user again. Test me 2 and sending it. So Bam. User mail, job 2. So this again has been requeued, and depending on the configuration settings, it can be 10 seconds. I'm not sure how long it is set though. It will requeue again and will try to finally get this email sent. Yeah, so you can see that in this specific instance, we have a custom. Where is the controller? Here. So we have a custom email, a custom string user mail, and that comes from create job. So whatever, you can also have a different method, like I create something, and then it can have multiple options here. And this is something you can put into the IDE helper as a task, and it should run. If we look into the app custom, maybe we can see it in here. Or is it collected automatically? I'm not quite sure. Yeah, but you can definitely add it into the annotators here. I did that in the sandbox, if I'm not completely wrong. Q. Yeah, okay. So, moving on. So, when we want to talk about another example, I think I have that on my slide as well. Icons and templates, for example, is one of, for me, quite annoying if I have to guess all the time what kind of icons are available. And here we can use the, or at least I wrote a icon render task for the generator. So that's the IDE helper that generates the possible options that can give us a list of all the possible icons in your templates. For that, I'm gonna install the IDE helper pretty quick. The extra, sorry. So require IDE helper extra and plugin load IDE helper extra. Yep. So now we can activate the icon render task inside of this one. And of course, we need to quickly also enable our icons that we want to use. I think I gave you already some examples of what is possible. So you can use font awesome, you can use bootstrap icon, you can use material icons, and some people also use feather icons. So all of these are possible. I think the most common ones are these two. We're gonna install the templating helper for that. Because that is a pre-requirement for being able to actually give you the icons as a display so we can see that it works. And we want to load that plugin too. I'm really just too lazy to type it, huh? Yeah. Ah, here I need to do that. Templating. What did I do in number 8? Oh, I used, yeah, okay, that was me. Fair enough. Okay, templating is loaded as well. Great. So this config is now valid. Let me see if asset compress is already installed or not in the composer JSON. No, it's not there yet. You can manually include it as well, but this is usually just a bit nicer to do. So if we want to use the asset compress and also load asset compress, we can remove it from here, by the way. Asset compress is now installed. Perfect. In our application config folder, there should be an asset compress ini that I created. So you can also add your own little configuration of what possible things do you want to add. Just to note, this comes now from what I already prepared as well, because it's a bit cumbersome to get all this data together, from a package JSON. So this is from the sandbox, let's call it app, where you can add all the NPM dependencies, so possible icons. And then in my case, I added a script section or assets sh section here, which basically just runs npm install. So with that, I'm creating all the possible dependencies in my front end. I'm adding all the web fonts, so shifting them to wherever they are needed for asset compress to work, because asset compress creates a different structure in the URL. So then this little hack is needed. I'm pretty sure there are other ways as well to do that. But that means everything should be available now. So whatever is in our app custom as paths, it should be available to get generated by our IDE helper. So if we run again PHP Storm, font awesome for icon collector doesn't like something. Format not supported JSON. Maybe I need to use, that's the wrong path here actually. The sandbox should have the right path. Font awesome. Yeah. Just to give you a small information about what this is. The IDE helper, and in this specific case, this icon render task, it needs to know what icon set are available and then where are they located in your file system, because what it does is it reads the files and extracts all the possible icons from that file. So if we look into the bootstrap JSON, for example, that's quite nice because it's a JSON. You can see here that's all the icon names available. So this is quite easy to read. Much harder for this icon helper is actually to read this variables less format, because now it needs to prac match out of whatever strings are in here. So it's a bit more ugly. But either way, it will, once it has the correct path, be able to extract all possible icons that you have. So let's run it again. Hopefully it works. Yes, it worked. Great. And if we look into the IDE helper, into whatever was just here, you can see now there's all these icons available. So it's a long list, probably thousands of lines. Here it starts with icons, and then it's a very long list, and everything is now auto-completed. So whatever we're looking for, if it's a battery or a book, it should be able to auto-complete in a second. Yeah? Good. Now let's use our icon helper to actually be able to do that. For that, I'm going to activate the icon helper. I think I commented out the other day to test it, but we can also manually load it because templating icon is autocomplete. So we don't even need those kind of stuff here. Cool. And in the default layout, let's make sure that the asset compress is working, so all the layout stuff is being included. That's also nice. If everything works now, we should be able to see our same session again. Yeah. And we want to now maybe exchange these icons, these texts here with icons. So instead of using edit, maybe we can use an edit icon to click here. With the IDE helper now in place, let's see what happens if we try to use it. Yeah? So we go into the template for the index action on the users here, and we go here and say, well, what if we do an icon here? So where's our icon helper? This. Why is it not available? Well, that's easy, because right now it only knows about those two that are annotated in our app view. So in the app view, you see at the top, parent, at least it comes from the parent. These helpers are currently known to the application and thus to the templates. So if you want to be really fast in your templates, you need to make sure that your annotations are always up to date. We added a few more helpers, but we didn't run the annotator, which would actually add those. So if we do that, bin cake annotate all minus v minus d, just to show you. Oh, bin. Oops. You will see that exactly this happens. Yeah, so these 4 new helpers would be added to the app view. Everything else is unchanged except for now again the status is an int. Okay, that's cool. If we do this for reals, so without the dry run, you can see that you can repeat that, everything is fine. It will add them to here. So that automatically happened through the IDE helper. And now it should be available in our templates. So wherever you go here and say, hey, let's use some helper, like this icon, and there we go. It's available. And all the functions on it are available. So render is available. And now, if the autocomplete from the PHP Storm generate worked for the tasks that we just configured according to our icons available, we should have the icon collection available here. And we do. So all of the icons that we can add are here. By default, the IDE helper will assume the first one in this configuration array doesn't need a prefix. In that case, it's our font awesome. So font awesome, you can directly use add, edit, diddle. If you would use bootstrap icons, you probably need to prefix them with a BS, and then you can add possible icons from this namespace. Now, if you have only one namespace, you never need that, but if you need different icon sets, then you have namespaces here. But for now, let's use the bootstrap, the font awesome one, which is available as edit. So that's cool. If we do that, and go back to our template. So what's going on here? Yes, you have an HTML tag, and for security reasons, XSS reasons, you cannot directly use HTML here. So of course you can quickly add a escape title. This again comes from the PHP Storm plugin deep assoc. It knows what kind of possible options are here from usage, and we can use escape title false. That's one option. Yeah. And there we go. We got our icon. Nice. Another option that I personally find quite nice is if we use the templating plugin anyways, it can provide you with a I think it's a value object. Yeah, it's a value object that implements stringable, and so internally all of our HTML links, post links for forms, all of that stuff can actually know internally if this is a safe string or if this is a value object of the icons, because they are returned as a value object, by the way, and then can be used directly without having to use escape title. So if you want to not have to use escape title, you will have to quickly adjust the HTML helper. I think I have the code for it quickly here, just to save some time. Yeah. So this is our HTML helper on project level that extends our core level. Source view helper. Here we create a new class HTML helper. And what we're doing here is we're extending. Do we need to extend the tools helper? I'm not even sure about that. Probably don't need to. We can use a normal core helper. But what's important is the HTML helper trait, and that comes from the templating. And those will override link and link from path and so on. And with this overriding, one second, I need to see what the annotator does. The annotator now recognizes that we are switching our HTML helper. So it adds the annotation for it now on the app view. That's cool. We do that. So, and with this, any call to the HTML helper will actually go into the app HTML helper in this one. And if it works, it should automatically know which is a safe string and which is actually a icon value object. And then the icon value object is resolved at the runtime in there instead of casted beforehand. Yeah? So this is quite handy if you want to save a bit on the escape title everywhere in your code. How much time do we have left?
3 minutes.
How many minutes?
3.
3. Okay. Well, yeah,
A few extra.
Okay, I'll finish it up quickly. I think, yeah, with this example, we probably have already covered quite a bit of what's possible within the framework to really easily work with it. So yeah, maybe we go to the discussion time real quick. Are there any questions or anything that I might have missed or maybe was too quick on? Skipped over? Is there anything in the Slack channel? I don't see anything in the Slack channel. Yeah.
I mean, if it, no, it does. Hello. Did you build some workflow for GitHub Actions, like to auto-commit the IDE helper changes?
Wait, why would you do that on the GitHub Actions?
Because then you don't need to do it locally.
Now, well, the thing is, they kind of change the code, right?
Yeah, sure. Like it also commits. So I mean, like I was just asking, like I can of course build this myself, but maybe you already did the work.
I do have something which is my toolbox, and the toolbox in a way runs the cron jobs for all of my plugins. So it automatically each night does the it also sees if something is failing or not working and so on. And there I use something like code style fixing. So yes, theoretically it's possible, but with annotations I'm a bit more careful because oftentimes it changes it to something that is not quite true, or because of a misconfiguration then is really wrong. And I want to actually, and that's why I'm using the -d, -v, the dry run. I want to actually look at it first, see if it makes sense, and then I'm applying it. And if not, I can go in the git diff. So, I mean, that's also always nice to have small chunks here, because if you go into git, where is the diff commit file? Yeah, here, like so. Okay, that's maybe not the best one. Here, git. There was a git diff, wasn't there? I just saw it. Git diff. Yeah, here. With this, I can quickly, easily see what is actually happening, and I can revert very quickly certain lines that are not true. If you commit silently in the background on the CI, I would rather use maybe a dry run with exiting code if something is not clear. That is a possibility. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't auto-fix things. Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
Anything else? I would love to go more into how actually the autocomplete and everything magically works for the enums, because that is supposed to work. I'm not sure. There must be something small missing, which to debug at runtime is always a bit tricky, and so I'm going to postpone that for the time being. Anything else that you might want to look into? Wait, there's a cube.
Thank you. Does PHP-Q support cron jobs? You have shown CakePHP-Q.
No, that's my Q. If you JSON Q.
Yes.
So that is currently my queue, which has been working for the last 15 years. That one, I run one cron job to execute it. There is a queue scheduler plugin. It's an add-on that you can use. It's quite new. It's based on also a few others of the team that worked on something similar. So if I queue scheduler, which in its idea creates cron jobs based on from the GUI, the backend. So you can go into the admin backend, you can add any command, any queue task, any custom little snippet that you want to execute regularly as a cron job, and that would work. The other option would be to manually adjust your cron tab file on each server instance, or however you deploy them, of course. So this sometimes is easier to deploy because it's just going to the backend, clicking save, and it's actually already running in the background. So that is what I'm using for my queue. If you use the core queue, there might be other options to work around that. Yeah. And I recommend looking into the sandbox because some things are like shown here. I couldn't show the admin backend just now because I didn't activate admin prefixing. So, does it work now? Admin queue. Ah, it actually works now. Funny. So here you can see that those mail tasks failed with a certain exception. The attempts here, if I go back to the queue and run it, it would actually work, as it would actually run through if I remove the exception, of course. But you can also force reset here. So if I force reset, it would now be freshly created. Like it appears as it never ran before, and you can rerun it. So if you find an exception, oh, it's a code error, yeah, okay, it will not get lost. So the queue task will just be there and it continues, and then you can rerun that. But yeah, either way, you can go to the sandbox and you can also explore that. You can download it, you can run it locally. Sometimes it's nice to just look at it and see that, oh yeah, okay, cool. I have, if I press F5, I can see the status of the queue task in the background and follow that along. So for all of these things, templating, you can see all the icons that are available. So I'm sometimes going here and just showing all the possible icons, quickly searching through. Font awesome, material, bootstrap. So yeah, I recommend also looking into the sandbox, maybe adding your own plugins. There are quite a few, but maybe you want to add whatever you want to showcase, and